Simple questions for 100 people. Welcome to the experiment. I'm Bill Carell, and this is my investigation. My research project is to gather data from 100 beautiful human beings for the sole purpose to see what actually happens across the interviews. Now, the questions are fixed, and all the interviews will remain consistent, with the variable being the actual participants themselves and their answers. So it's as if I'm having you, Rebecca, come sit on my porch and share your thoughts so I can learn about people. Now, we're looking forward to what we're going to find out when we're done, and we're very interested in the people, the process, and obviously your particular story. So it's my distinct pleasure to introduce, well, no, I'll let you do that. What is your complete name?
My name is Rebecca Bentley.
No middle name?
Oh, I do. It's Elizabeth. It's a family name.
Nice. So say some more about that. You're trying to forget it, aren't you?
Yeah. So every female on my mother's side of the family, our middle name is Elizabeth.
Oh my goodness.
Yep. So it's a historical name now.
That's like George Foreman and all 8 of his children being girls and boys being named George, right?
Yep. Yep. And then on my dad's side of the family, the middle name of all the boys or the men is the first name of their father.
Very interesting. So this sounds like a couple of traditions that started a minute ago. They probably are not something that started with the people who were doing the naming, right?
Right.
How far back does it go on your side?
Oh gosh. I think it goes back as far as my great-great-grandmother, for the females, and it's actually 2 separate families that have this tradition. And then on my dad's side of the family, I think it goes back to my 3 greats. So great, great, great.
Wow. These were smart people.
Yep.
They wanted their name to persist through time, and so, I mean, that's even better than being named the 3rd or the 4th, don't you think? It's kinda hidden from folks until we shake it out of you.
Yep. Yep.
I like it, I really do. So, Elizabeth, has that ever been well, let's just move into the next question. What's your favorite nickname that most people don't know?
So only close people know this nickname that I have, but my dad always calls me Becca Boo.
Peekaboo.
So that's been my nickname since I was before I even remember. My dad always called me that, and no shame in saying it in front of my close friends and new boyfriends and through the years. So, yep,
Yeah,
I hold that nickname near and dear now.
good for you. Good for you. So, just to share something with you, my number 2 daughter is Rebecca also, which you may or may not realize, but
Yep.
Beckety Boo is what we used to call her.
Oh,
I
that's fun.
I've metamorphosed, pet names for her entire life. I still do. And at one point, my nickname for her was George.
Hmm.
Uh, so what other nicknames do you have?
That is probably the only nickname that I have through the family. With work, they call me Reb. So my initials right now are Rebecca Elizabeth Bentley, so
Right,
REB.
right.
And it happens to be the first 3 letters of Rebecca. And I happened to sign an email and I was working very fast and I just put Reb instead of my full name and it stuck. So now at work, they call me Reb.
That's funny. That's funny. And the 3, initials of our names used to be, for everyone in top management back in the '70s and '80s, instead of, the secretary having to type out their full name, it was just WKC or REW or HWK or something like that. So Reb is cool. And I've known you for a bunch of years, but I've never known anything or anybody to call you Becky
Oh,
or anything.
no.
Yeah, or
Nope.
Becca or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm Auntie Beck to my nieces and nephews.
Yeah.
But if anybody ever called my house and asked for Becky, my father would say, "There is not somebody here by the name of Becky," and would hang up on them.
Yeah, feel free
So,
to call back when you know what her name is, right?
yep, yep.
Very, very cool. So your dad was your partner in keeping that one alive
Yes.
for you. So this one's kind of interesting, and I get lots of different answers to it, as you can imagine. But when did you first notice what color hair you had?
Oh boy. Um, that's a really good question, Bill. I don't think anybody's ever asked that question before of me. So good question. Um, I would probably say I mean, I was probably in high school when I cut my hair off. When it really hit me when I butched my hair in high school, and I think that's probably when the biggest notice happened of my hair. Everybody was shocked that I cut my hair, and so I think that was probably the time that I noticed the actual paying attention to the color of your hair. And then, of course, now that I'm older and my silver streaks are now taking over, I definitely notice my hair now.
You're wearing your wisdom on the outside now,
And-
aren't you?
exactly, exactly.
So that's really cool. And so, uh, when you did cut your hair off, this is the first time I've ever heard this story. And don't worry about it; it's just you and me talking. Nobody else is
Yep.
paying attention here.
Nope.
What possessed you to do that? To butch your hair, I think you said.
Yep. So I was a competitive swimmer and a competitive tennis player and a competitive basketball player in my youth. So as I got older, I became more involved in the sports, and it was easier to put a swim cap on to get in the pool with short hair. So
Sure,
that's what started it.
I'll be darned. Now I couldn't have made that story up, so thank you for sharing that with me. So, next question is, what is your favorite thing to do to intentionally waste time?
I like to play brain games on my iPad. So word games, Scrabble, word searches, some cards. I like to play cards on my iPad. And my sister and I actually have gotten into a game called Catan. And so whenever we want to waste time together, we play Catan, and we will play for hours. So I'm a Catan nerd, I think.
How do you spell Catan for those at home?
Catan.
Exactly the way it sounds, but it could
Yep.
be a Q these days. It could be a number of different letters, but, and is that meaningful in any way? Is it derived from anything,
I
or is it an actual a game that's been around, or
So I think it's a game that has been around. They have different versions of it, so you can play many different layouts of the game. My
right?
sister and I like to play the traditional one, but it's basically the concept behind it is building villages and cities, and you do it by gaining resources. And so, um, if the resource is lacking, you got to find another way to get that resource. And it can be pretty grueling when we block each other and short out the other one of resources. And
Oh, wow.
it's a good sibling game.
Yes, getting even for old scores, right? Settling up. Okay. So, are there anything else that you would like now, taking a look and seeing, are there any other time wasters that, most people will just not know about you?
Oh, not know about me. Um, I, I, I like to sit on my back deck with a cup of coffee very first thing in the morning and just take a nice big deep breath and kind of relax the brain before the start of the day. So not very many people know that I do that, but I do. As soon as the weather is, warm enough to get out there and it's not raining, I'm sitting out there before work, getting up early and just relaxing. So,
We're kind of on the cusp of that right now, aren't we? It was, I think,
yes,
in
we
the
are.
low 40s this morning, which is better than the high 30s, but
Yep, I was back there this morning.
good for you. Good for you. That's fantastic. So, what's your favorite movie to watch alone, Rebecca?
My favorite movie to watch alone. Oh, so that would be The Music Man. Um, I my mother and father raised me on all the old movies, Singing and Dancing and Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, and um, so watching The Music Man with the marching band and just the humor of that movie of nobody knowing how to play. I myself had always wanted to be in a marching band. I played the flute for 14 years. So that was something that I had always wanted to do, but I never had the opportunity to do it. I took a different path. But my father, that was a movie near and dear to his heart.
Yeah, I get
So,
it.
yep.
I get it.
And in my family, um, and I don't know how far back it is, but I know that on my dad's side of the family, we had a musician or a music writer that wrote music for John Philip Sousa. So, so I guess family ties too to marching bands and music, and that's that's my guilt free when I'm by myself
Good
movie.
for you. And, Robert Preston, if I remember correctly, is he the he's the guy that's trying to tell
Yep.
everybody we've got trouble right here in River City,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Yep. And when
And
I was when I had my first son, Tyler, when he was young, he'll probably kill me that I even mentioned this, but he used to sit and watch that movie over and over and over and over again. He loved that movie.
yeah, there's a lot to love, isn't there?
Yep. Yep.
So, this one I'm really looking forward to with you. If you were to have an action figure made of you, what superpower would it have, and what colors would its uniform be?
Okay, so if I was a superpower, if I had a superpower, I think it would be that I could walk up to anything, touch it, and see the history of that object. So, walking through the woods on a hike and you see that old stone wall and you want to touch it and you want to see I don't know, maybe it was the Civil War, the American Revolutionary War, and the fight that was happening right over that stone wall.
Yeah.
um, so I guess it's not like a your traditional superpower where you're helping and saving people, but it's just to understand our history and help keep it alive is what I guess what I wish my superpower was.
Yeah.
And my colors of my cape would probably be red, white, and blue for the history of our country.
There you go. That's great.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
I'm going out on a limb here because we haven't shared this superpower of yours before. Would it also work if you touched people?
Yes, of course it would. Yep. Um, and if there was a way I could touch people and take away all their stresses, I guess I would extend my superpower to be able to do that. Um, I wish everybody in the world didn't have stresses, but I guess that's what makes us stronger people when we can overcome those stresses.
And some would say that's what makes us all commonly human, right?
Yep.
We
Yep.
do share some things, that maybe all of us are not too satisfied or happy with, and there are some people that are pretty good at making that go away, you know?
hmm
And then
Yeah.
there's other people that are really good at amplifying it.
That is true.
Yeah, that's great. So, what did you want to grow up to be when you were 5 years old?
Oh, um, when I was 5, I would say I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. At 5, I wanted to be a kid for the rest of my life. But I think as I got a little bit older, 8 years old, 7 years old, I should say it the other way, 7, 8 years old. Um, I wanted to be a professional tennis player. That is what I wanted to be.
Excellent. Say
And
some more.
I worked very, very hard at tennis. My mother was a tennis player, and so she was at the racket club all the time. And so, of course, while I was there at the racket club, I just started playing more and more and more and more tennis. And as I got older, it was a drug to me. It was I could not get enough of it. It probably kept me out of a lot of trouble. But once I got to high school, I was playing tennis. I was getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, playing from driving to Glastonbury, meeting with my coach, and then playing until 7:30, and then making it to my. I always tried to get a study hall the first class so I could come in late so I could play tennis, and then I would come in and go to class, and um, ended up. It was a drug. I can't explain it. I just couldn't stop playing. It was all I could think about.
That's interesting. So did you have heroes or heroines that were playing at the time that you looked up to and watched, when they played, professional tennis? Or was this more of a kind of a localized thing that if your mom hadn't been playing, you probably never would have gotten interested in it?
So, it's probably I never would have started playing tennis if my mother and my whole family was into tennis. I was the baby of 3. I have 2 other siblings, so, whatever they did, I did pretty much. So, my brother was 8 years older than me. My sister is 12 years older than me. So, um, my brother put a tennis racket in my hand and he showed me the swimming pool. So those were the 2 things that I became very competitive at.
Yeah.
Chasing my brother, right? Older brother, always stronger, bigger.
Yep.
So I always wanted to be just as good. So, um, as far as people that I looked up to, on the professional world, it was, the John McEnroe, Jimmy Connors, Andre Agassi. It was everyone that I and you could pick all of the people that were famous at that time in tennis, and you could pick apart their game and pull something from every player. So I always watched everyone. Like, what could I learn
Yeah.
from everyone? But yeah, tennis was my life. Yep.
Did you ever go and see any of the professionals play?
I did. My mother and I used to take a bus trip every year to Flushing Meadows to
Yep.
to the U.S. Open. That was so much fun to do. And I also the Davis Cup. So the Davis Cup is the different countries playing against each other,
Yep.
and the U.S. Davis Cup. There was a U.S. Germany match happening at the Hartford Civic Center. So my mother, the racket club that one of the racket clubs we belonged to was chosen to chauffeur the drivers.
Yeah.
And so my mother was one of the chauffeurs. So I was in high school. I was a freshman in high school, and my mother brought me that day. So whenever they had whenever they had a practice match at the Civic Center, it was me and these players.
Yep.
So I was by myself sitting there on the sideline watching these players practice. So Boris Becker was one of them that I, got to talk to and meet. Um, Djokovic, who's big time now. He's
Yes.
he's very big now. He was actually much younger and was a practice partner back then. So I got to meet him before he even became, you know, who he is now.
Yes.
And then probably the highlight of that whole day was when the last trip of the day was to bring John McEnroe back to his hotel. And so I got to sit in the back seat of my mother's car next to John McEnroe in downtown Hartford, driving him back to his hotel. And it was the coolest thing for me in my freshman year of high school.
Turns out he's not a bad sort when you
No, he
when
was,
you remove the, the line judges.
yes, he was really nice. Yep. Long as
Yeah.
those line judges aren't there, he's all right.
His, his leadership, in those days, if he had ever known. I actually heard him say something last year when they were at Wimbledon, and they were talking about how they've replaced, all the line judges. They still have the
Hmm.
chair umpire.
Hmm.
with the Cyclops machines. They're at the level right now. We could do that in almost every sport, including
Right.
basketball and football.
Yep.
However, however, with that said, I guess I'm not sure. It might have been his brother Patrick that was asking him, John, did you think that you'd be able to piss people off so badly that someday that they would all quit the game?
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
And you know what his answer was, as I recall? He said, "If I'd only known that all I had to do was press some more at the time."
Yep.
But,
He's an icon in the tennis world, that's for sure.
no doubt about it, and
Yep.
he's also somebody who's a pretty good interviewer as well, in my
Yes.
experience, so
Yep.
that's neat. That's an aspect that I had never heard about before, and now we can actually jump into the next question. We've got some foundation here. What is your greatest accomplishment?
So I think i- if you look at, I I'm gonna say the stereotypical answer, but it is absolutely true for me. It's my kids.
Yeah.
Yep. I don't know why I'm so emotional today, Bill.
So you wanna know what that is? I'm gonna give you something. This will be great when you're coaching other people that work for you. It's just you've touched an area of your life where you do not yet have sufficient language. Does that make sense?
Yeah, oh yes.
So
Yep.
your emotional response to that is to be in awe in a moment, and you could either laugh, in which you just did after
Yep.
you, but see, it's a good thing. It basically
Yeah.
says you're in a part of your life where there's an opportunity here to gain some new language.
Yep. So um my oldest son, Tyler, is I is doing what he absolutely loves in life, and there's
Mm,
nothing more satisfying as a parent to see them doing what they enjoy to do,
yeah.
and they are where they belong, and they're contributing to society in a positive manner.
My goodness, every parent's dream come true.
Right, right. And then my youngest is
Yeah,
going to college. He goes to UConn and he's pursuing his dreams, and they're both amazing children, and they're my biggest accomplishment.
that's fantastic.
Yep.
That's really fantastic. And, you know, when you think in terms of accomplishment, I love what you're saying because my interpretation of that is that there's something about who they are today and who they're being. That part's not accidental, you
It
know?
takes a lot of work as a parent to get them there.
Yes, ma'am.
And as a village, right? There's good we've had a good village around both of our children that have been there to support them and help them, and when we're not able to be there, we know that there are other people that can be there for them, that they respect and want help from, or would reach out for help if they needed it.
Yeah.
Um, so so yeah, takes a village.
The village is always gonna be there.
Yep.
There will be idiots in that village from time to time. However, if you teach your children well, they will listen and they will just
Right.
nod their head and then they'll shake their head.
Oh,
So speaking of that, who is your favorite person to listen to?
my favorite person to listen to. Um, so you have me stumped. I could list off three people right now, just right off the top of my head.
Yep,
Sean Connery.
yep,
I love his voice. Um, but it would also be my dad, and listening to all his words of wisdom and his stories and the situations he always got himself into and got himself out of.
yep.
Um, and it would be my Uncle Peter, who has an amazing, he's my mother's brother. Um, he's no longer with us, but he was a man of great character. Um, he survived a naval accident, um, the Hobson, the USS Hobson boat was split in half by one of their other boats in the fleet, and it sunk. And he was on the boat that got split in half. So the stories that he has around that, you should Google Peter Mahoney Sr. With the Hobson. It's an amazing story of what he went through. So just his stories and his life experiences. I always wanted to ask questions of Uncle Peter. So even as a little girl, I was slightly afraid of him, but he was always someone that I wanted to sit down and talk to.
That's fantastic. So since you invited folks to look it up, how do
Mhm.
you spell that last name?
Hobson, my uncle's last name is Mahoney, just like it sounds, Mahoney.
And then Hobson, is that with a P or a B?
A P as in Paul. Yep, Hobson.
Gotcha. Probably someone's name, I would imagine.
Hmm. Yeah, it was one of the fleet, one of the boats in the fleet that had, yeah, yeah.
Well, I, for one, will be doing that right after we complete this interview. So that's great. Those are three wonderful people to listen to. And funny enough, you're not the first person to be a fan of Sean and his voice, if you can imagine. I like
Probably
listening.
him and Samuel L. Jackson probably is another voice, right?
Yeah.
Nice, deep voice.
Yep. That's really fantastic. So I've got a sentence for you to complete.
Okay.
When I grow up, I'd like to.
Hmm. Well, I would like to travel all 52 states in the US.
52.
52 of them.
Good for you.
50, however many I can get to, Bill. However many.
There might be more than that by the time you get to it.
You know what? That's exactly right. There could be more. You never know.
So are you talking about Puerto Rico and Guam? Because those are the two next candidates, as I understand it.
Yeah, listen, I add them to the list. I absolutely
So
would
say
like to
some
go.
more about that. Have you traveled much?
So, I mean, I wouldn't say that I've traveled a lot. I've been on a couple cruises. I've never been over to Europe. I've been to all the states on the East Coast, and as far west as Oklahoma. So I'd like to venture out and see more and probably revisit some of the states as I traveled when I was younger.
Yeah.
So I feel like our country has a lot to offer, and I want to go see. I want to go sit in that, hole in the wall coffee shop and meet the locals and just enjoy what is out there.
Yeah. The the penchant for sitting on your back porch and just watching the world go by, and the first thing in the morning with your cup of coffee, that actually does work a lot of different places.
Yep, it sure does. Yep, and that's where you meet the interesting people, when you just say hello or good morning to someone, some people just need to hear that good morning, and some people haven't. The elderly, they walk in and get their cup of coffee and they have a story to tell, and sometimes they haven't been able to talk to somebody in a couple days, so you could be that person and learn a lot about a person, and they appreciate that someone paid attention to them. So um yeah, there's a lot.
That's really yeah, no, that's really insightful, especially that you mentioned, how the elderly can be. But you know what I've noticed is that, it used to be kind of a pain to me and a nuisance when a relative or somebody that I knew would have to tell me the same story over and over and over
Mhm,
again. And finally, I spent a little bit of time just watching who they were being while
mhm,
they retold this story, which I'm certain they knew in some cases that they'd already told me about it.
yep,
But what I found was, and I'd love to hear your take on this, is what I found was is that they were actually reliving the moment.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it wasn't
Yeah.
like you were, just giving me information. They were taking themselves back there, and if I gave them the time of day, I could go along with them, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, you can see the, spark, the youth come out in their the spark in their eye, and, yeah, just makes them, and it makes them feel young again, it makes them feel listened to, it just it yeah, yep.
We both had a mutual friend who was the Baron of Baloney,
Oh, yes.
and we loved to listen to him go at it, and we
Yes.
never knew what the next thing coming out of his mouth was gonna be.
Yep. Yep, yep, yep. I miss his stories, that's for sure.
Boy, me too, me too, no doubt about it.
Yep.
So, okay, so now, what's the most important thing in life to you, like, right now?
Um, so the most important thing in life right now to me is, um, I think there's a couple things that I will mention. Um, I still have a sophomore in college. So that's very important to me to help guide him through, the next few years of finishing college. And there's a lot of pressures, and I see it with college students as I work at the university. So I see a lot of students having a lot of, there is a lot of mental health concerns and stresses. And so, most important to me is to help my son get through the next couple of years and find his job, and be able to move forward. Um, but and another aspect of my life is, I don't want to say newly divorced, but it's been 4 years, and I'm what's important to me right now is just being independent, and you know getting the strength back, and being able to do things on my own, and get through it. So
Yes.
um yeah, those are probably the two most important things, and reconnecting with my friends and my family. And um as you know, Bill, I lost three family members in 9 months. So my family went from a pretty decent size to, all of a sudden, it's just me and my sister now. So
Yeah.
my my family, my sister and her kids, and so
Yeah, no, that'll be another conversation,
yeah.
and, yes, I think that's gonna connect with a whole lot of people that are listening to
Mhm.
this.
Yeah.
So, there's no one out there who hasn't got holes where they used to have a lot of voices that,
Oh, yeah.
you know so
Yep.
thank you for that, and that is important. It's so important, to start to put it all back together again and
Mhm.
start to, not, heal as much as grow.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
They're different talents, and in one case, you're trying to fix something, and in the other case, you're basically saying, "No, that's part of who I am." It's like
Mhm.
that knot hole over there in that tree that
Yep.
now is heart-shaped or whatever it is, you know?
Yep. Yep. There's a
Yeah,
lot of healing and a lot of growing that happened all at the same time.
exactly.
Um, and it's made me a stronger and better person, I think.
I will vouch for that,
Thank you.
at least from a distance, let's put it that. So, with all of that said, what would you like to leave in the world after your life is done?
um, I just hope that, you know, I just hope I was a good example for somebody. Could be a group of people, could be one person. I just want to be a good example.
I don't think there's much debate on that subject at all.
Thank you. Bill, you have been asking some very emotional questions of me today.
Well, it's also something that I wanna say is indicative of the kinda loving, generous person I know you to be, okay? And your willingness to go there and your willingness to be authentic and genuine it's huge, and I think it's going to actually inspire some people out there,
I
you
hope
know?
so.
In a
Yep.
world where yeah, in a world where we can be anything, the first thing you wanna do is be kind, and then the next
Yep.
thing you wanna do is to be yourself.
Yep.
And don't spend too much time overthinking what yourself means.
That's true. That is a true statement there.
But, and so, I just want you to also kinda, like, take on board that when somebody asks you what your life's work is, not a usual question. You're not
No.
gonna hear that, and you're not gonna hear that at the bar. You're not gonna probably
Yeah.
hear that at work, you know?
Yep.
Yeah, what are you up to really, What's the
Mhm.
most important so, yes, I had no idea when I wrote these questions down a little over a year ago, what kinda answers I would get to them, and what I've found is that in this space that you and I are creating together, there's all this room to actually take a chance and go someplace that you probably haven't taken a look at it for a little while.
Yep. This was great. These were great questions. I appreciate you, Bill.
Well, I appreciate you too, and guess what? There's more.
Oh boy. Okay.
When you go to a baker,
Mhm.
Rebecca, and, I haven't for a long time, but my baker used to always, no matter whatever I bought a dozen of, and we've asked 12 questions so far, I'd always get a 13th, a 13th free donut or 13th free cupcake or roll or whatever it was. So here's the baker's question for you. What is the thing that most people misunderstand about you?
Oh, if you were to ask the people at work, it would probably be a totally different answer than people in my life, in my personal life. Um, I think at work, people I can come across as being very strict and having probably very high expectations. But then once you work for me, like I'm as fair can be, and I love to have fun. And so once you can get crack me, get through that initial probably stereotype that I have
Yeah.
from the outside. So that's probably a place where I misunderstood a little bit about, just the stereotype that I may have. And I'm very confident that you can go talk to my staff and they will say wonderful things. um, so I just have clear expectations, I guess, is the way to state that. But personally, I think being misunderstood, um, sometimes I can be quiet and kind of push away a little bit. And it's just sometimes my friends, think they maybe I'm upset or angry and it's just if I refer to what we talked about a little bit ago, it's me growing and it's me um just needing a break and just self-awareness and sitting on my back porch having my coffee. So
Metaphorically and actually,
yep.
in fact, yeah.
Yep. So I guess that's a full circle comment there, I guess, how making me realize all of my answers now have just kind of come full circle.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, an anchor is an anchor, right?
Yep. Yep.
And it's a place where you can go and just kinda explore being present and, mindful and in the moment, you know?
Yep. Yeah.
It's
Yep.
great. So, that kinda wraps up all the questions that I have for you. Do you have any questions for me, Rebecca?
How did you come up with these questions, Bill?
Um, so quickly, the reason I decided doing this in the first place was I went through a period of time of really watching a lot of YouTube videos at that point in time, 2.5, 3 years ago, when folks like Ben Shapiro or Jordan Peterson or other so-called conservatives, and actually they're really not any label whatsoever, um, would go on college campuses and people would come out and not allow them to speak, or would ask them questions that were intended to get a result that had nothing to do with being authentic and genuine. And I started thinking to myself, I got these two beautiful grandchildren. They're half Native American, half Navajo, and the other half is kind of Irish and German and a whole other fish stew, you know. And I've listened to how things in when you talk about communities, and then you also talk about the identity conversations and all the like who is what and all the rest of that, and intersectional scubby go whatever nonsense. It was like, no, let's get back to talking with human beings as human beings,
Yep.
and find out what are we all experiencing in this world. So I thought I would steal shamelessly from James Lipton, and I'm hoping you know who that is, but
I
he,
do.
yeah, a wonderful man that has probably interviewed in excess of 200 or 300 really famous actors.
Yep.
And he ran actors workshop for up and coming folks, and many of those people actually came through those doors and were educated. So he asked the same questions, and I didn't want to use his questions per se. So I just kind of ripped these off, and I thought, what would be some things that people would feel comfortable with that would at least be icebreakers for them, you know?
Yep.
And
Yep.
then I will follow you where you want to go in the rest of the questions that come afterwards. But that's a
Yep.
great question, and thank you.
Yeah. I thoroughly enjoyed this. This was great, Bill. I appreciate it.
Well, you're entirely welcome, and I appreciate you. And I just wanted to get your energy out into the world because you do good stuff. And I'm your one of your biggest fans. And as a result of that, I want more people to know who you are, and maybe get some thought provocation going for them.
Yep. Well, thank you, Bill.
My pleasure. Anything you'd like to say to wrap up?
I am thinking this has been great. I wish I could share my world, you, as you are very thoughtful and um, ask great questions to get me to really think about me internally. So thank you.
Good for you. That's an even better bonus, isn't it? When the sharing actually gives you a chance to put a mirror up and take a quick look at yourself and go, that's kind of interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Well, thank you, Rebecca. And simple questions for 100 people. This is what we do. We give everyone an opportunity to express themselves in their own terms. And hopefully, well, if you learn something from it, or it opens a new avenue for you, or another question, hey, how bad can that be? Anyway, that's a wrap for us here today. And thank you again, Rebecca.
Thank you, Bill. Have a great day.
You too.
You've been listening to Simple Questions for 100 People, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can find every episode at exvadio.com/podcasts, the Apple Podcast app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever you find podcasts.